when you realize that the government is just printing money out of thin air, it almost makes you mad, right? Because when you think about you're literally trading your hard-earned time, 40 hours a week for paper that they're just printing. If the dollar has lost like 96% or something like that of its value since like 1930 something, like that's scary moving forward, right? So where else can I, store my money that will give me the best return moving forward? What is the best performing asset that I can save my money in?
All right, DeAnte Bruton, welcome to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked you're here. I put a tweet out that I was looking for people who are on their early journey into Bitcoin, but perhaps not yet, really sure about it. Someone who, still trying to figure it out, who's listening to content and consuming stuff. And you reached out that you've been listening to the podcast and listening to different guests like Chris Johnson or TC, like the Road to One Bitcoin. So yeah, I'm happy that we're connecting, and I didn't really prep anything. I'm just hoping to be of value to you, and just kind of like hear about your journey. So maybe it is nice to create some context about where you're at or why you reached out, and then just shoot your questions at me, and I hope I can help you.
Got you. Yeah. Well, again, Bram, appreciate you having me. So for context, I've heard about Bitcoin back in 2022. I think I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and I think everybody has gone to this phase of where they heard about it, but it took them a few years to rally for it to kind of catch their eye. And then once they dug into it, they're like, oh my God, right? So I kind of had that experience back in 2022. And coming into this year, I seen a post on Instagram. And to your point, it was CJ Johnson, who you had on your podcast earlier this year. And I remember following him, but I wasn't really following his content. And then he put a post out, and I just kind of took a quick glance of it. And then I went to kind of do some more of my digging. And that's what kind of led me to you, because I was looking for podcasts to help me explain or help learn about Bitcoin. So I wanted to consume content and things of that nature. So again, went down this whole rabbit hole, and that's kind of what led me to you. And then the first video I did listen to you about and your podcast about in regards to Bitcoin was CJ Johnson. And then from there, I listened to TC, who was doing Road to One Bitcoin, which I thought was pretty cool. So once I started going down this rabbit hole of, kind of digging into and learning about Bitcoin, it really almost like blew my mind, essentially, because I think what was the turning point for me was once you kind of like understand the problem, like in our, global economy, that we've been lied to about money and the whole, that whole crazy situation. I think that's when you realize that Bitcoin could be not the hedge, but the solution to that problem. And for me, that was the eye-opening thing. I'm like, okay, Bitcoin is so unique in its existence that this is something that can literally is the solution to, the problems that we're seeing in fiat. So that's what kind of led me down the whole, pathway of I do love Bram's content. He's very active on X, and I started following you. And then you became like a daily rotation, in my commute to and from home to work, just trying to consume content, learn about content. So when you tweeted out about newer people in their journey, I was like, I'm gonna just shoot and see what comes of it. And I think that's the power of the internet. And I'm pretty excited because me being newer, I feel like it could I'll ask some questions or have some ideas that, could kind of reach some of your audience who's starting on their Bitcoin journey as well. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And yeah, appreciate
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's very cool. I know that like the Bitcoin journey is a very lonely journey, right? Like for me, in real life, now I have a bit more people to talk to, but before that, it was very lonely and pretty hard to, also kind of like bounce the ideas of either someone that you get when you, like you said, go down the rabbit hole and try to figure out what is money, what do I thought was money, what is money actually, and then kind of like coming to the conclusion that you shared, like no one ever really taught me about money, but I've also been lied to about money. Like what is behind that, right? And maybe, and of course I want to hear your questions, but I wonder if you can kind of describe your realization of this "I've been lied to about money" thing, because sometimes I think that when I say that, or now you say that, it sounds so I don't want to say like a conspiracy thing, right? But I know that people are turned off when you say a sentence like that. And so I just wonder, like, what has been your realization, or what made it click for you where you just realized, okay, there's something with the money and I need to kind of like go deeper to understand what is actually going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say probably about 6 years ago, and this was just like the basic foundation of kind of where I started to get more intentional with learning about money, right? And that's from just a basic understanding of the fundamentals, right? Saving, investing, having some type of budget, and just learning about money, right? Because I think money is such a large, it plays such a large role in our society, but yet nobody really knows about it, which is very interesting, right? There's not even, you barely have a class on it, in college and high school and things of that nature. So as I graduated college, that's when I got into the real world, right? Like it's almost like once you get into the real world, it's like you want to know about money, right? Because now your parents ain't really paying for it. You got to figure things out on yourself. So that's kind of what started me on my journey of, being a lot more intentional with my money. But I think the eye opener for me was I want to say about 3 years ago, I started putting money into my high yield savings account. And that just came, direct deposit out of every week to my high yield savings account. Fast forward, I think around that time, Bitcoin was, I want to say, about averaging like 20,000 near, something like that. Fast forward 3 years later to 2025, once I got and started to learn and go down a rabbit hole of Bitcoin, I was like, hold on, if Bitcoin is doing this the last 3 years, and then I started doing the comparison between my high yield savings account, the interest rate, versus what Bitcoin was averaging year over year. And the number actually blew my mind. And that's when I seen a tweet. Actually, it was crazy because I seen a tweet that said people were using Bitcoin, because I seen Bitcoin as an investment, right? But people was like, no, Bitcoin can actually be used as a savings account. So that's really what made me do the comparison. I'm like, okay, I have it as a savings account. Let me just run the numbers, versus what I was saving and what I have currently in my high yields versus if I would have been contributing the same amount into Bitcoin, week over week over the last 3 years. And the number blew my mind. So that was a huge, like, turning point and like eye-opening moment for me, because I'm like, hold on, I'm putting my money in what everyone's saying to do, right? High yield savings account, things of that nature. But my money's losing value. And that's when I understood. I'm like, wait, hold on. There's a problem here, right? Because if I'm like not even really keeping up with inflation, honestly, and then that's when I was like, wow. And it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, this is the problem, right? Like, if you're saving in fiat, we're actually losing value over time versus compared to Bitcoin, right? So that's kind of was like the big eye opener for me when I started to compare the two, and looked at Bitcoin as a savings account as well as my high yields, running those numbers, it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp is leading this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of relying on one institution, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a cold storage multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent custodians, where no single party can move your funds alone, providing an unprecedented level of security. Your assets are protected by a 100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, with all transactions fully auditable on-chain and only executed at your direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all time. Beyond custody, OnRamp provides comprehensive Bitcoin services that include trading, lending, inheritance planning, and IRAs. You can view them as your private Bitcoin banking partner tailored to your wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps you secure your generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. You can sign up at onrampbitcoin.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. If you first want to learn more, you can also book a free consultation via their website to speak with one of their Bitcoin custody experts. Tell them you came through me, and they'll take extra good care of you. My American friends, I've got something for you. If you're into Bitcoin, you want to grow your stack in any way possible. What if you could do it effortlessly just by spending your fiat? The Gemini Bitcoin credit card is designed to help you do just that by giving you instant Bitcoin rewards on every purchase. Just use it like any other credit card and earn back up to 4% on transportation, 3% on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on everything else. There are no annual fees for this card and no exchange fees to receive your Bitcoin rewards. Sign up to get your limited edition Bitcoin Orange credit card and earn a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in the first 90 days. You can find more information and terms in the description below, or go to gemini.com/Bram to sign up today and start stacking effortlessly. That's gemini.com/Bram. Yeah. So maybe to zoom in on that, like what, for context, like what's your age?
28.
28, yeah, right. So you're also early in your career, right? As you mentioned, you're doing what everyone else is doing, or what you think you should be doing, right? And well, you heard this on the podcast, right? But I talk about that a lot. Like when you are younger, like you're focusing on your career, you're building that, right? You're trying to figure that out, and then if you don't want to be like a hardcore investor or think you're not a good investor or whatever, like you just want to save. Like saving is a very basic concept, right? And very logical to do and very good to do. So I think it's really good that you share how just focusing on the savings part actually also shows you Bitcoin, right? Like I don't want to be. I also don't want to be an investor. I don't want to keep up with all that stuff, right? I want to just focus on what I do and live my life and be with my family and whatnot. And so being forced to be an investor, I think is actually a very bad thing. So I think it's interesting that you share that even just saving made you realize that Bitcoin is a better savings vehicle, which, perfect, right? Like that is exactly what I also think it's about. It's about saving the reward you get for spending your finite time and energy on, whatever job or venture you do. Cool. Nice realization. Like if you have any questions or stuff, let me know what are the things you're thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we'll start here. I just want to ask, right, like going off of that, right, like realizing that, Bitcoin is a better savings vehicle, right? Because for me, when I did that, I'm like, Bitcoin being at, I believe it's around 20,000 3 years ago, to now it's, over, I think it's like 115 or something like that right now. For me, right, coming in being a newbie, so to speak, I was like, I'm late, bro. Like, this sucks. Like, dang, like, I wish I would have did this 3 years ago, right? So I guess this is always the $1 million question, right? Like somebody who is feeling late, what does that look like? And how can they, how can you express to them like, hey, like, it's not too late. Like, Bitcoin is the early stages of Bitcoin. So For you, like, how would you break that down to somebody, let's say like an 18-year-old who's, just getting into the Bitcoin world and just kind of starting off their career, maybe just graduated high school and, not trying to go the traditional route?
Yeah. I love that question. I think there's multiple things to think about, right? Like just having the idea by looking at the number that you're late, you lost, right? I think is already a very interesting thing to think about, because you only got to Bitcoin because you were curious and interested, right? And you're learning stuff. And then you think about the future potential or what it could be for you. But then the next thought is like, no, like I'm a loser, I'm too late, right? Like I should have figured it out earlier, which that in general, I think is just interesting that we have become wired like that is the way to think, that you cannot really like trust yourself for the due diligence you are doing, right? And that you did before. So I think that's one. I don't want to go down that path, but I just think that's interesting that a lot of people, that there's a lot of people that think this, right? Like, oh, I'm early. And I think, or sorry, I'm late. And I think I had that too. I even had that when Bitcoin was at $10,000. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's going to change. But what really helped me is this. I don't know if you know this overview, if you've ever seen this by Jesse Myers, right? But just when you talk about the use case for Bitcoin is money, right? We talked about the store of value asset. That's the savings part, and eventually that turns into a medium of exchange. If this is the best money that I can store my time and energy in, then it'll also become the thing that I prefer to receive in a value exchange. But I think that's also a parallel discussion, is like, okay, what comes first, etc. I think it goes like this: first it's superior savings, and then it moves to medium of exchange. So when you think about savings, like storing wealth, what are people doing that in? We just mentioned, if you just have cash, that each of the units of your cash, of your money, slowly is being devalued, right? So actually the function of saving, you can hoard more units, but actually keeping your purchasing power with those units, that is actually eroding. So you could argue that traditional money, what we think is money, cash, right? Like dollars, yens, pounds, etc., isn't actually fulfilling the function of money as being something that you can save in, i.e. Store your purchasing power to use that in the future, because it's losing value, right? And so people that have a lot of money know this, and so they are looking for other ways to store this value, or at least mitigate, as you also mentioned before, the debasement or the price inflation that comes from that. So they are using other assets as substitutes for the store value function of what money should have. And that basically goes, people collect cars and collectibles, or the biggest thing is real estate. Real estate has become a tradable asset instead of a utility asset, right? Just people need a home for protection, safety, etc. So if you look at the use case for Bitcoin, it's probably the biggest use case for technology in the world, because it's money. Money is a technology that we use to exchange value with each other. And so in each of these other assets, especially in real estate, there's something that is called a monetary premium, right? There's a premium on top of the actual value of a home that comes from the trade that is being done with this asset. So people value homes more than what the utility value basically is, and so that's what they call a monetary premium. So value is stored in all of these other assets. Basically, people buy bonds that are in real terms actually a negative yielding when you compare it to the actual debasement and the inflation, right? And so that is what our parents basically grew up with, right? This is low risk or zero risk, right? What do they call it? Like the risk-free rate, that is bonds, because your government is always going to pay the bond back plus the interest, right? But that, as you might know, is nominally, so you get the numbers back, right? You get the money back, including the interest from having a bond. But if the debasement is bigger than what you got back, then you actually have a real negative yield, a real negative rate, right? So the question, to answer the question, are you too late? Well, if Bitcoin is at 2 trillion and it is superior to any other of these assets as something to store value in, right? So real estate, some people say like, oh, you cannot live in a Bitcoin, right? But we're talking about saving here. So here it's also real estate. There's a big, some people even say there's like a 30% monetary premium in here. So that's like 100+ trillion of value that is not real, basically, not really tied to the utility. So if you research the characteristics of Bitcoin, how it works and the portability and stuff like that, and compare it to any of these other assets, and for example, the absolute scarcity that Bitcoin obviously has, right? So if the demand grows, the price or the exchange rate of Bitcoin goes up, and more value will be stored in Bitcoin. This is the total addressable market of Bitcoin, which is 1,000 trillion, which is a 500x from the 200 trillion. And then, you can decide what you think Bitcoin can actually capture from this market, and that is the upside that you have. So if you agree or understand or think that Bitcoin is superior to a certain degree to any of these other things that people use to store value, then you can also logically conclude that more people that have these other assets will slowly move into Bitcoin once they understand what this actually is, right? And this is something that, of course, has happened in the history already, is people are looking for the best way to store their value, basically. So that is not anything new. And so this is, I think, how you should look at it. But for yourself, I think it's based on understanding or where you think it could go. That should show you the upside. I think there's another thing here. Total global asset value has grown 6% over year. Bitcoin has been the star performer here. So this is a really interesting thread by Jesse Myers, who goes further down this. So this would be my answer to am I too late? Well, if you look at this, you're probably very, very very, very early. But it's very hard to understand how much money there is in the world, and it's easy to think 2 trillion is already so big, and the price is $115,000. I am too late, basically. But I also had to learn that is more a numbers thing, and this is the context I think that you need to kind of think about that for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that, right? Because early in my journey, I had trouble kind of understanding that, right? And I think the problem with that was I see where Bitcoin's at now. I hadn't yet understood where it's going, right? And I think that was the biggest problem why, at least for me, I thought I was late because I didn't understand where it was going, right? All of its benefits and how it could capture those other assets and take market cap. I hadn't yet understood that, and I'm still understanding that, right? But I think that's why, at least for myself, people early in their journey have a hard time understanding where it's headed.
Even when you just look at gold, right? Gold is 22 trillion, Bitcoin is 2 trillion. Mm-hmm. There are many experienced financial professionals that say, Bitcoin is superior to gold. So even having gold parity is an 11x from here, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Maybe one thing to add to that, I also think that people need to understand that this is a slow process, right? It is a one-by-one conversion of people that are like, something is wrong with the money. Maybe I should look into that. Exactly like you described. And so it takes a very long time for people to understand money, understand the problem, then even understand Bitcoin and then be able to compare that to all these other things that people are using as a substitute for money. I mean, like that is a very long individual journey, let alone a very long a collective journey before everyone figures out. So I would add that to the argument for you being early in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then something that also was kind of interesting and gave me hope was I seen a post where it was comparing basically Bitcoin's where we're at now in Bitcoin stage as far as world adoption versus where the internet what the internet looked like back in I think like 96 or 97, how early it was globally adopted, right? And now we've seen where the internet is, right? Like, can we even really do anything without using the internet? So that was just, for me, at least a cool comparison between, how early we are to Bitcoin versus, where we were, with the internet, 25 years ago.
Yeah. I just searched Bitcoin internet adoption. Yeah, maybe it's something like this. I don't think we're even at 3%, for example. I know other people do, but this is, it's a network, right? Like the internet was a network. It's a network of people, of nodes. It's also like more like, so it's people, it's a social network also. So it takes time for people to figure it out. And maybe one thing to add here is that the internet and even also mobile phones, right? That use case was quite clear, right? So the benefit for you as the individual user was quite clear. Oh, you can have a computer and you can access more information than the books in your school. Okay, that's cool. That's something that I want, right? Or having a mobile phone, being able to, take your connectivity with you, etc. Like those use cases are very technology driven and are appealing to people, but actually, the use case for Bitcoin is a superior money, which forces you to understand that the money that you have to use in your country, like everyone, is something that is not designed to be beneficial for your individual life. And just that is way harder to see than just like, oh, cool, a mobile phone I can take with me, right? Or the mobile phone that went from like this suitcase that people wore to like the Motorola a brick phone. Like that is a very clear technological step that people can actually see and hold and use. Whereas I think changing the technology of money is something that is way more abstract, especially because Bitcoin is digital and you cannot hold it. And a lot of people think real money is something you can hold. So that's also why I think we're early. Like this is a way harder thing to understand and then take the decision to adopt, basically.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that literally is the kind of the self journey. Like you started off saying, like, it's lonely. Right. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I did take the chance to, reach out to you, when you had tweeted that, just to connect with somebody, who understands and I can bounce ideas off of and learn from and just have a conversation with, right? Because it does get lonely, right? When you're just the only one who kind of feels like you're the only one maybe in your peer group who really understands what this can do, understand the problem, understand the solution, right? And then just trying to learn, like you said, learn everything as far as like adopting it yourself. It does get lonely. So that's why I think I really did take the shot to, reach out to you and say, yeah, like I would like to connect and have a conversation about it. Cool. So I think with that being said, right, like what to like help somebody understand, right? How would you help somebody who doesn't really understand, or somebody maybe who's coming from a different background, right? Because I feel like older, like I would say like my aunts and uncles, who's, in their 50s and 60s, right? How would you help them understand kind of what Bitcoin is, what it can, provide, et cetera, right? Because, the old saying where like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? But I think we're kind of living in we're obviously living in a whole new world versus, when they came up.
If you want to self-custody your Bitcoin stack, I recommend the Blockstream Jade Plus. I've been using this premium Bitcoin-only hardware wallet for a few months now, and I love its design and ease of use. What makes it stand out is its open source hardware and software, and Blockstream's unique genuine check, which makes sure that your device is authentic. No backdoors or compromises. You can connect with the Jade Plus however you want: Bluetooth, USB-C, or you can go fully air-gapped with its built-in camera for cable-free QR transactions. The metal case feels solid and the color screen is easy to read, and it connects with your favorite Bitcoin apps like Blockstream Green, Sparrow, and Electrum. Get your Jade Plus today at store.blockstream.com and use code BRAM to get 10% of your entire order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with Stampseed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, Stampseed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from Stampseed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with Stampseed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do want to start off with, I think this is probably also the hardest in just my journey, in a sense that even the people that know me and know I am a risk-averse person or a diligent person who wants to do research before they make decisions, like they know all these things of me. They know I'm enthusiastic about technology, that I like to try new things and explore that and understand that, etc. It's not like, and all these people know I have this podcast. It's not like they're calling me every day and are like, oh, interesting, you're so curious about this, I want to learn about this too, right? So I just want to share that, in the sense that even now that I'm doing this, it's not that people call every day and think like, I want to learn more. Can we talk for 10 minutes? You know what I mean? So it is very hard. I find it very hard that even the people that you love and you would want to help see this too, you cannot force them to see this, right? Like everyone has their own experience of life in general, their own level of risk taking, of having trust in other people or institutions or whatever, right? So everyone came to the place where they are in their life in their own way. And so I think the hardest thing is you cannot force people to wake up to the fact that something is wrong with the money. But I do think we need to start there. So not pitch Bitcoin, but kind of, I love this question because it really depends on where these people are. But what I usually try to do, so if your aunts and uncles are approaching pension age, or maybe they are early pension, right? What is their prospect of the future, right? What do they think about, let's say going towards pension? Do they think it's there? How do they feel about that coming towards them? Do they feel like that is something that they are looking forward to, or maybe they are dreading? I think that could be a place to start. For example, I'll share like last week even, I know someone who got like a message from their pension fund, and they work in tech. They make like 120,000 euros a year. So that is a lot in euros, right? And they got an overview of their pension that said, and they're like mid-30s, they got an overview of their pension that said, if you continue working for this employer until you reach retirement age, which is like 65 or 67 even, you will receive 37,500 euros a year. And we were talking about this, and I was like, who can survive on 37,500 euros a year today, let alone in 30 or 32 years when you understand that the money is constantly losing value, right? And I think this could be an interesting approach for people to realize, okay, I'm going to have some sort of money, I'm contributing to this. But if it's not enough today, how can it be enough in 32 years? Because it's undeniable that you will need more units, right? You need more units of money. And I think I talked about this with guest Tom Karatza in an episode where we talked about if the real rate of debasement is let's be nice 7% a year, start calculating that over 30 years. And you'll probably lose about, I don't know the math, just quick math, like 50-60% at least of the value of what you have, right? So you already need to mitigate that loss of purchasing power in 30 years. You need to mitigate that today. And I think the closer you are to your pension age today, I think the more prescient that issue actually is, depending, of course, on how much you think you're going to get. So I think that could be a starting point to talking with them about it, because if they don't feel anything or any uncertainty, I think it's going to be really hard to eventually get them into Bitcoin, if that makes sense. So yeah, seeing the problem is hard, especially for people that have a higher trust in institutions and government, etc. Like this older generation, of course, grew up in a time where a lot of things went well for them, or they actually were able to get a home and start a family and stuff like that. So if you go visit and say like there's a huge problem, like the government is printing money into infinity, they don't really experience that problem consciously. Right. And so I think that's when you're already kind of like off to a bad start if you're confronting them with something that might be true, but they never even thought about. So I don't know if this is a good answer, but I think just poking and seeing if people are, I think are positive or negative about the future, and then see what thread you can basically pull on to, for you to understand what their understanding is of money and the future value of it, and then what that actually does to their lives, right? Like I'll give one more example. Like I saw a video of a guy who, I don't know, lives in California or something. He's like 70. He paid off his house like 20 years ago, and he's still working only to pay the property tax, for example. So he has to earn, I don't know, $25,000 a year. Even like that's a lot for a 70-year-old. And so he's bagging groceries somewhere or something, right? And so, I think there are plenty examples of people that are not retired like the picture you have, being retired and just hanging out all day or doing fun stuff or with your grandchildren or golfing, whatever you think is your retirement. So yeah, I think I would start there. So not even mention Bitcoin, just show you're interested in how they think about it, or that you're researching money or how to best plan your life and your career and stuff like that, and kind of like see who is kind of triggered by this conversation in a positive way, and being like, okay, that's something that I would like to discuss with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's kind of like an important conversation, because when you realize that the government is just printing money out of thin air, that it almost makes you mad, right? Because when you think about, you're literally trading your hard-earned time, 40 hours a week for paper that they're just printing, it almost feels a little disrespectful. Right? So I think having, just a conversation about, what that future looks like. And yes, for that generation, but I think also for our generation, right? Because if that generation is experiencing that, I mean, I don't even want to imagine, when my generation, 35, 40 years from now, what that would look like then, right? And for me, I think a lot of the whole point of me going down a rabbit hole in Bitcoin was because I understood that, wait, if the dollar has lost like 96% or something like that of its value since like 1930 something, like that's scary moving forward, right? So I was in a sense of like, okay, where else can I, store my money, right? That will give me the best return moving forward. Like, what is the best performing asset that I can save my money in?
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty young, right? So thinking about that 40, 45 years from now, and not trying to have a vehicle that can put me in the best situation, in 2, 3, 4 decades was a risk to me, right? Like that was a big risk for me. So yeah, just going off that, I think kind of to your point, that is an important conversation to have with, that generation as well as, our generation as well.
I don't know if you ever saw that there's a clip with Robert Breedlove where he shares how much money has been printed during COVID. And I was trying to find it. I'll just Google like how much money did the US print during COVID. I think there's a huge debate. Some people say 80% of all money in circulation. Other people say, just quickly scanning, like 40%. Even if it's 40%, right?
Crazy.
Imagine you have $100,000 in savings. Something happens, right? Or you have $1 million in retirement and you're about to retire, and your government creates 40% extra units of money on top of all the existing units of money. This is kind of how I visualize it for myself, right? All the existing units of money are therefore being devalued, right? If they buy the same amount of goods and services. That is just a scale. This is also in a Lynn Alden video, actually. So the more money is there, like that's heavier on this side, the more the prices go up on the other side. So you can buy less of the goods and services with the amount of money that you had, right? So imagine, and that could be maybe a question for your aunts and uncles, right? That you could share like, okay, I'm thinking about how do I prepare for retirement in 35-ish years. I'm thinking about how much units of money I need because, for example, I saw the government print a lot of money during COVID. And I wonder if you ever thought about that or how that impacts the amount of money that you have when you are going to your retirement, right? So it is basically you can save for 50 years, then the government prints 40% of extra money units, and therefore whatever you saved up until that point is devalued by a similar amount. And so that is I think the most practical way you can actually describe it. And if people can conceptualize that, I think you have a starting point for a further conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty mind blowing. And so my next thing would be, right, like if because I think everybody in our generation, at least, a lot of my peers, they hear, invest your money, invest, right? What would you say is the differentiator, right? Like, why would somebody want to invest in stocks versus Bitcoin, right? And I get a lot of the conversations where I've heard like people are scared of the risk. They think Bitcoin's too volatile. They don't trust it. They don't think it's money. They don't think it's the best store of value, right? So how would you compare the two, in a sense, to help people understand like, hey, Bitcoin is the best vehicle, which is, invested in stocks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on how much you understand Bitcoin or how much you listen to certain channels on the TV that say it is risky or a pyramid scam or whatever. I think this all goes back to how much are people really thinking for themselves, right? So like you said, okay, I need to invest, I need to grow, I need to whatever. That is, of course, something I think that we've all heard you should do, but I'm thinking about where to go. Like, for example, stocks, right? I like a year ago, I had a conversation with a woman who is quite known in my country for being in stocks and sharing that and whatever. And then we talked about Bitcoin. And at one point she was like, yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it could all go down or whatever. And I said, okay, let's say we have a big problem here in this country and we have to flee the country, right? I take my Bitcoin in my head and you take what? Your stock brokerage app that says, this account in the database of this company belongs to, this lady. And, we flee, we get somewhere, and we need to get food or gas, right? And the only thing you have is your stocks. That is your wealth, right? Are you going to show like an app that says, look at this stockbroker app. I have like all these stocks, like one is Tesla, one is whatever. And like the total is, I don't know, let's say $1 million, right? Look, this is what I'm worth. Like, can you give me food or shelter or gas, right? Like I tried to make it an example like that. And then I said, well, so what does that mean? Like, do you actually own the stock or do you have an account at a stockbroker that is licensed to broker the stocks that are actually in the possession of one clearinghouse? I don't know if the word is clearinghouse, but there's like one institution that actually manages all the stocks. So the stock is not in your ownership, like it is assigned to you in the database, multiple databases. And so that is how I approached it, just to think about, okay, is that actually my property? And then some people will say, well, yes, because you have a contract with the stockbroker, and the stockbroker has a contract with the the entity that actually owns the stocks, and that's how they can do it, etc., etc. But then comparing that to Bitcoin is like, yeah, I own my Bitcoin, period. There's like there's like nothing else. Like I either have it or I don't, right? And it's the same with a title deed of a house. Like imagine the same situation and we're stranded somewhere and it's like, hey, look at this paper with a stamp and and like an autograph of a random person in my municipality that says that this house on this street is actually mine, right? And then you're referencing again like third-party either verifiers or databases that apparently say you own something. So there's like one route that you could approach it is like, do you believe that this ownership that is abstracted away in multiple levels again of validators and databases is a real thing? Or is the ownership of a private key for X amount of Bitcoin, is that a real thing, right? So that's how you could approach it. So when I said that to her, she was looking at me and she said like, okay, damn, you are right. So that's kind of like approaching it from like the property ownership angle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me, that's what it was. Like when I started going down a rabbit hole, like once your mind is like introduced to like an idea, experience, or concept, like it can't go back. And that's kind of where I'm at now, where it's like I've been down the rabbit hole and still going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin. I can't go back to like fiat, right? Like it's like this weird, eye-opening experience where you're like, wait, like this just makes logically so much more sense for my future, than fiat. Right. And the facts are there. It's not like these are made up numbers. It's not like, this is like hidden secrets. Like the facts are there. Like it's literally in front. So that was like an eye opener for me. And then, to your point of, kind of like understanding and doing your own research on Bitcoin. Where would you recommend people start there? Right. Because for me, I feel like I had a unique situation where I was searching, I was curious, because I just had like, I understood like something's not right. Right. So I was going out to look and search. But people who hasn't really had that eye-opening experience yet, like where would you, or if people haven't had that experience yet, but are looking to learn, where would you recommend they start at like a basic level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to plug something that I made. It's startwithbitcoin.com. I know it can be better, but I would just recommend these two videos. the What's the Problem video. This is made by Joe Bryan. This is a 30-minute video with an amazing explainer of what happens when people in charge actually have the opportunity to create more money on one side. And then on the other side of his story, there's someone that chooses to not create infinite money. And then he explains what the actual consequences are in incentives of people that are in charge and also the people below that. And it really shows what the actual current effects are of the opportunity to create infinite units of money and how people use that and follow those incentives, which are, it is logical that people follow that. But I think this video really shows everything that people might think is wrong in the world or broken or something that they care about or would want to fix. And this video really shows that all of that stuff is downstream from the fact that the money is broken, in a sense that it can be created infinitely, devalued infinitely, and that actually influences all the incentives of everyone, basically everyone that is touching money, which is everyone except the children, right? It influences what do you do. And then the second one I would say is this one, which is a bit more technical or difficult. I think there is actually a version of someone who created with AI a simpler voiceover with the same visuals, which I think is a great idea. So both these videos are like 39, 33 minutes. That is probably where I would start. So that's an hour. And then this presentation by Jack Mallers, it's called An Introduction to Bitcoin. I actually saw this live and I thought, Introduction to Bitcoin. I know all this stuff, but this is probably the best intro to Bitcoin presentation I've seen in 10 years in Bitcoin. So together, this is, like 2 hours. And if you don't want to spend 2 hours learning something new, actually, then I don't know if you're motivated enough. So there's more videos on this website, but I would say these three are really great. And then I almost want to say any interview with Jeff Booth where he talks. There's this book here. It's called The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. It's a very thin book. So if people like reading books, I would say The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, because that actually talks about, and I think that's also very valuable. I've used that in conversations, that if you agree that humans are always working on progression of technology, optimization of productivity, right, of time and energy, and there are a lot of examples of that, right, going from horses to tractors, and we had trains, and just we have technology that's constantly evolving, that is upgrading our life standard, right? If you agree that that is something that people are doing, then this book is the right book for you, because it shows you also that we could have been way further than where we are today if it was not for the money that we're using to price all these gains in, right? So if you have productivity gains or technological gains, Jeff Booth explains that these gains are basically deflationary. Their force is deflationary, right? So your phone is like 10,000 or maybe 100,000 times faster in computing power than the first computer, right? That was the size of a container. And I don't know if you had to pay for like a Texas Instruments like calculator during your study. Like I had to buy like a $200 calculator for my study. Now that calculator is in here for free, and so that's kind of his point, that eventually deflationary means it becomes cheaper, therefore more accessible to people, and eventually it just becomes free, and so everyone has it, right? And so if technological progression is a deflationary force, i.e. making it more accessible to everyone at a better price, quality, etc., that force is battling the inflationary force of the money that you're using to price this technology in. And so that book is very thin. I don't even know how many pages. Less than 200, I think. That is an amazing explainer of that battle that is going on with the technology and actually where we are today and what it could be tomorrow. That's why it's the price of tomorrow. And this video is literally called "What's the Problem?" It is. Yeah, it's like 35 minutes about the problem, then 4 minutes about Bitcoin. And the same for the Lynn Alden video. That is probably 20 minutes about the problem, 10 minutes about Bitcoin as a possible solution. And even then, I saw on Reddit some comments on the Lynn Alden video. Even then, people say like, holy shit, the first 20 minutes were mind-blowing. I never thought about that, about money. But why are they talking about Bitcoin?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because that's kind of what was the turning point for me, where you had to understand the problem, right? Because if you understand the problem, then you can therefore search for a solution to that problem. And then once I kind of understood the problem and seeing like the government is just printing money out of thin air, that's when I was like, oh, wow. Right. And then the savings of my HSA, high yields versus Bitcoin, if I would have that comparison. So all of that is kind of what led me to like, oh, wait, I understand the problem. Wait, is Bitcoin the solution? Let me do my research. Right. That's kind of what kind of pushed me into that direction, kind of getting orange pilled. But one last question, Bram, in regards to, right, like kind of like where Bitcoin's going, right? Like, I know we talked about a lot, and I this was very helpful, just from like a very beginner level, kind of basic level. I think this was extremely helpful, at least for me, and I hope for your audience as well. So, like, because we talked about where Bitcoin is going, right? Like understanding where Bitcoin is going. Mm-hmm. It's $2 trillion, right? Anything that's have reached a $2 trillion cap hasn't disappeared, right? So can you talk about that perspective of people like Bitcoin won't be around for long, or, people think that the government will, ban Bitcoin or something of that nature, right? Like just that, I think would be cool to kind of wrap it up.
I think it ties into what we mentioned in the beginning, that you figuring out Bitcoin and thinking, oh, I'm too late, kind of being nihilistic. I think this is similar in a sense that anyone you hear say that has clearly not studied Bitcoin. And I know how that sounds, but like you said, there has been no asset that reached 2 trillion in valuation that then ever went away, right? And I think also kind of what we talked about is the solution for a better money is a money owned by no one, that no one can create more of, right? That you can send globally, that is apolitical, right? Areligious, a neutral money, a digital money that is secured by the most powerful computer network in the world. That would be like the one sentence for Bitcoin. Like, in essence, the idea of Bitcoin is very simple. It is a computer protocol for digital money, right? So there's a set of rules. And the promise of Bitcoin is basically, these are the rules, and the rules are not going to change. And they aren't changing because there's an incentive structure for all the participants that adopt this money to secure it. So run a node or a miner, right? And just follow the rules. The rules are, we're never going to make more of it. That's the top rule. And so just that being a money of which the monetary policy, the rules don't change, it is too simplistic for people to even consider that to be the solution to the problem they have, which is being forced to use a money in the country that you live in. You're forced to use, like I can try to pay with, Venezuelan money wherever you live in the US, and no one's going to take that, right? and you are forced to use US dollars where you live, you are forced to use this money and participate in a system of money that you can truly never understand. You are even using a money in the US, right, where the dollar bill actually says this note is legal tender for all public and private debt. So there's a literal text on the thing you use as money to exchange value that says this thing you are holding and using as money has zero value. It's an abstraction. It's a representation of something else that other people actually might find valuable or not, depending who issued the debt. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it like that, it's a very intricate and difficult system to understand. And so I think if the solution is something that is so profoundly simple as this is a money that cannot be diluted and that is secured in this and this and this way, assured in this and this and this way, yeah, it just sounds too stupidly simple, I think, for people to get that. So when you see that this is a computer protocol, it's a concept, right? The whole white paper, you should read that as a concept. This is an idea for superior digital money. Mm-hmm. And now that it's out in the world, it can never actually die because it's a concept. It's a protocol of a concept of rules with the application of being a digital, global, decentralized, neutral money. And that is the same as like the rules of chess or the grammar rules for English or the rules for math. Does that make sense? So it is defined in a certain way. You can not adopt English or you cannot play chess. But if I want to play chess with 3 different rules, there's not going to be that many people that want to play that with me. And if I fly to Singapore to participate in a chess tournament, and I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to play chess at this tournament with these 3 other rules, no one's going to play with me. Right. So if you think about it like that, it is an unkillable concept, just more metaphysical, not in the manifestation that it is right now, but just that concept already, without it actually existing in the world, is already very powerful, but it is actually existing in the world, secured by the biggest and strongest computer network in the world, and it's monetized to this 2 trillion. So those would be like that would be my explanation for like it's never going away. And then after that, all right, so where is it going? Well, you started thinking about this in some way. You had your own reasons to start thinking about this, right? You had your own reasons to dive further and reach out today and ask these questions, and hopefully we can help people. And you've been talking with people in your vicinity, right? Like this problem of fiat money actually is the reason Bitcoin exists. So we have Bitcoin existing, and we are talking about it. I'm trying to reach more people. Like that is the Bitcoin thing. But don't forget that on the other side, there is a problem with fiat money, the infinite debasement, as you mentioned, that is just continuing. That doesn't really care about the fact that Bitcoin exists in any way. So the problem is going to continue anyway into perpetuity, into infinity, or until it blows up or whatever. Like that problem is not going away. So if you think about the problem here, infinite fiat money, debt creation, and Bitcoin as an absolutely finite digital neutral money, this is not going to solve that. This is an exit from the other thing. Yeah. Right? So if we think about the solution to a problem, like a Band-Aid to a wound, that this is not going to be a Band-Aid to a wound or a medicine to some disease or whatever. This is just a totally different thing. Does that make sense? So it is, these 2 things exist next to each other. And this thing, the infinite fiat money debt system, is only going to accelerate towards being worth nothing. I think it was Voltaire or something who said, all fiat money returns to the base value, which is, the paper it's printed on. So I hope people can see this. So so this is a picture. Yeah, the full picture is like a full triangle. Yeah, I have different tweets about this, but like, so this is like my mental model to adopt Bitcoin is, so this is a full triangle, basically. I don't know why it cut off, but can capital from the green triangle that's constantly getting bigger, right? More money units that represent a certain purchasing power of real goods and services in the world, will eventually go into the orange triangle because of everything we just discussed. But this orange triangle with 21 million units will never grow in size. Like the size of the triangle never goes bigger, but the amount of value stored in the triangle will become bigger. Does that make sense? So each unit that is making up the triangle will be more valuable.
That's a great depiction, an example of that, because you would think that the orange triangle would grow bigger if more like if the green is going into the orange.
Yeah,
you would think it gets bigger, right? But no, it doesn't.
Yeah, everything. It's what it represents. It's what it represents. It's what the units in the green triangle represent. That is being transferred into the orange triangle, and the units of which the units will never grow.
Yeah, that's a great depiction. I actually love that depiction.
Awesome. Well, perhaps that's a great ender, unless you have anything else that is pressing that you want to ask. But yeah, I hope this was valuable.
Yeah, no, this definitely was, and I definitely appreciate obviously you giving me allowing me to share your platform with you. And just come on here and talk about things and kind of relate on things and get feedback. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate you on 2 years of Bitcoin for Millennials. Appreciate what you're doing. That's pretty dope. But yeah, I thank you for having me. And then also, I'm curious, like, is there any like conferences or anything that you know of that 'cause I see sometimes that some Bitcoin conferences, but are there any like in the US? I think they're more so out of the country, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think in the US there are a few. I only went to like 4 conferences now. But I think it's super fun. Like the first one I went to was in Amsterdam. And that's like 2 years ago even. So I was in Bitcoin for a long time already. But actually walking around there made me realize that there are so many other people that are also into this, right? So when you're online and you follow people, or you see people talk about it, or you see people having views or retweets or whatever, I always felt that that's like very abstract. It's more like numbers, less feeling that it's like other people, but of course it's other people. But when you walk around at a conference or a meetup, and you see the diversity of people that are very enthusiastic and deep into Bitcoin and really care for it, that I think at least helped me a lot. I thought it was very inspirational to actually experience that this goes way beyond what you experience in a digital way or like on the internet, like just actually meeting other people that are into the same thing. And I think it makes you feel less lonely, and it gives you also the opportunity, again, to like bounce ideas and hear these other ideas. And just hearing it from someone physically is very different than watching a podcast or some digital presentation. So if there's anything around you, like a meetup or whatever, I would definitely advise you to encourage you to go, because I think it's a great way. Also, if you find someone in your area that you can actually connect with and just jam about Bitcoin with, I think that really helps with just the study and the reflection and all those things.
Awesome,
man. Well, thanks so much. I also really appreciate you coming on. I hope this was valuable to people. And for anyone listening, if you have any questions or other things that you think I should discuss, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to do this again. Thanks again. I really appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch. Let me know how it goes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brandon. This was fun.
All right, man. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.